Work session to order. Join me in the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda, we have 3 applications for outdoor assemblies. First one is after Labor Day. The second one is during the summer, and the third one is the annual Arts and Crafts Fair.
So,
Amber.
yeah, I can go over that. The first one is it's Christine Anderson, and it's a surprise birthday party on Crescent Beach. And it's September 29th. So I know, right? We keep that a surprise, but hoping this person doesn't watch Channel 20.
She's on Zoom. You may want to let her deliver.
I'm on, but thankfully my husband is not, so.
Christine, if you want to give us an overview of your application, that would be great.
Sure. Well, thank you all for letting me speak to you. It's the first time I've submitted an application like this and really appreciate the process. I'm hoping to have a pizza truck from Rolling in Dough, which is the Greenport pizza place that is recently put in, and they I think they've done other events on the island. And then to have they bring a cocktail cart with them, and it would be a pretty informal event on the Friday night, starting at 5 o'clock and going till probably about 8 o'clock. So a relatively straightforward event in the sense, not too much complexity, no band, no lighting. I think I would bring a personal speaker if I'm able to do that. And I could bring, tiki torches to light it a little bit, but don't need to do that. It's, you all can tell me what's admissible and what's not. Given that there's parking at Sunset Beach along that corridor, there's both parking for the truck there. I think, right, there are often food trucks that are already parked there. And then there's parking for the cars that would come. But I think most of our guests would be walking down the street from the Prydwen. So I'd imagine that, at least half the guests would be arriving probably on foot.
Okay.
Estimated number of people? Yeah, well, they've got
60,
70.
Yeah. Most people are coming for the Saturday night event, and this would be, I think 70 people. I don't yet have every person confirmed, and I could certainly update you as I got a little bit closer, but that's my best estimate for who would be attending Friday night.
Okay. Yeah, and this is after the season, so Sunset Beach is closed by then.
Mm-hmm. Truckers no longer going down there to check their application.
Yeah. So,
Christine, the only thing you have to be cognizant of is sunset, which would be nice. But if I had to look ahead, you'd have to probably say around 7:15 or thereabouts.
Right.
It's something that, it's still 2.5 months away. So, we've already changed a good 25 minutes since June 21st. So
I think in the application I put till 9 o'clock. I'm just looking at till 9 p.m. So I also think given the temperature, I don't think people will linger there that long. And I've arranged with the Prydwen for the bar there to stay open later so that people can kind of go back there if they wanted to, to continue to gather a little bit. But I imagine everyone will be off the beach, somewhere between, I'd say 8:30 and 9, and we'll clean up, and I'll make sure personally that that's taken care of.
Well, if they're cleaned up, I have no problem with tiki torches.
yeah, we got a letter from Brian Sherman at the highway saying that as long as the garbage was removed, they don't have a problem with the application.
Yeah, so we're good.
And Chief, you have any questions?
No, I reviewed the application with Meg and Amber Wilson, and I'm very comfortable with it. It's after the season. She's going to put the pizza truck right where the food truck is. And I fully expect that as a community person, she'll have that place back the way it looked before she got there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
Christine, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
have a good time.
Thank you. Don't mention it.
We won't.
Thank
We
you.
won't.
Bye.
Okay, the next one, it says party at Shell Beach. It's really a memorial service for, okay. Okay, we had a slight interruption there. We were Zoom bombed. start our meeting. Okay, so the second outdoor assembly application, it's just party at Shell Beach. It's really not a party, it's a celebration of life, a memorial service for Jim Brewer, J. Brewer Smith. Is that his wife's name? Okay.
Yeah, so really what it is a family gathering. They have about 25 people at one time, and the ask is not necessarily something they wouldn't be allowed to do anyway, just as people going to the
Right.
beach. But what they wanted to do is put an announcement in the newspaper, like included in his obituary, that they're gonna have this family gathering so people can come through and visit. So that's kind of why they're asking for us to give them a permit so that they can advertise for it too.
What's the date and time?
It's the 30th, so it's this Sunday from 11 to 1 on Shell Beach. And they're just gonna have just one of those 10 by 10 shaped tents that people bring, some photos, memory boards, coolers with beverages, just so people can come and gather and share memories. They'll clean up after themselves, and so that's the ask.
Did you see porta potty on that or no?
Yeah, same day. Same day porta potty, Meg?
No, they're not gonna do the porta potty anymore because they couldn't get someone to deliver it and take it away the same day.
Great. I just spoke with the applicant on the phone also.
Okay.
What do we do with beach stickers?
We can work that out on our end.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
No.
Very straightforward. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, we're good with the gym. Okay,
And just so we're on the same page, I believe Jim grew up here. It's a memorial service for the family. I just think it's something that we want to still be able to do as a small community.
right.
Definitely.
Yep, definitely.
I agree.
Jim, is there any way to, right prior to the start of that, to put something out there on McCones or something about parking, just to try to, I would imagine there's only going to be 6, 7, 8 cars, something like that, and they should fit down at the end of the beach.
Yeah, the only thing we have to backtrack on, and I'm not turning my camera on because I'm stopped from doing that, is that probably to tell them where they should be.
Yeah.
So I'll get with Brian and we'll try to find a spot that is, doesn't restrict other people in the community that are trying to use that same location.
Very good.
Sounds
Thank you.
Yeah, I was down there last Sunday around 2:30 and there were like 6 cars down at the end. There were cars spotted along the
Yeah.
way, but at the very end, there was
Right.
plenty of parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The end is the ideal spot, depending on the tide. I don't know what the tide is like there, but you can park 10, 12 cars easily down at the east end of that. Basically,
We'll let them know that's the best spot.
Yeah,
And then Brian just sent us a letter saying that as long as they remove their trash and clean up after themselves, he's okay with it as well.
okay. All right, so that's another one that's okay. Okay, the last one
And
is,
we have a resolution to
To
do.
approve that one
That
today,
was today.
one's for this Sunday.
Yeah,
We'll do a special.
okay. Okay, then the last one is the annual Chamber of Commerce Arts and Crafts Fair. This is a formality. Jonathan's here to speak to it, I guess.
Want me to speak to it?
I guess.
Yeah, because it's,
Because it's in a new location.
Yes, exactly.
What questions do you have?
Where is it?
Where is it?
Where are you gonna have it this year?
It's going to be at the back of the school.
Okay.
All right, by the school's playground, not the one across the
Christine, do you
street.
want to let me share, Christina, or I can put up the map?
Say that again, Jim.
he's just going
He's
to.
gonna share
Put
it.
up the map to show.
Got the map.
Got the map. He's gonna put it up for you, so,
Yep. That's the basically satellite view of it. Do you want me to point out things or can you read it?
Yeah, that's good, we can see it.
Okay. The Green Expo is going to join us, and we've got plenty of parking for vendors and patrons, all coming in from Duval. So nothing will be happening on School Street or at the Legion Hall or anything like that. Nothing around the corner, the circle.
so that area just to the south of the west, I guess, of the tennis courts, that's the parking area?
That whole red
Yes.
off.
To the right side is the parking.
Pardon?
Yeah, and everything to the left there is the arts and crafts, and then the Green Expo is the smaller box.
Right,
I would
so
think, right?
all of that will be
Right,
parking.
parking.
I'm gonna get the vendors to park in this area, so
Right.
patrons can park along here and
Yeah.
up here.
Okay,
That
That makes
Green
sense.
Expo will be here, there's a hill here.
Yep.
A slight incline up here, but people will still be able to drive up to unload their
yes,
booth stuff and then park back here. Food booths will go here, porta potties will be here, so easy access for everybody. My registration table with the raffles will be here, and this will be where the youth booths are, all along here.
Okay.
And that way it's close to the playground if the kids want to go play or anything like that.
Are you marking off spaces? You're gonna have somebody there trying to control that traffic? That could be
Say that
crazy.
again?
Are you gonna mark off spaces or you have
No,
somebody
no,
there?
we'll have someone handling
Okay.
parking.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
yeah, so it's basically all enclosed inside the track area, you know? Yeah, that's-
All in here.
Inside the track, yeah.
Yeah.
That's softball field type of thing.
Yeah. And this represents 100 spaces,
Okay,
so.
Wow.
just
And he
very
only
little
has
shade
like
this
10 or
time.
12 people coming.
Yeah.
So this is a bit more than enough for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
just not a lot of shade.
Carolyn,
That is-
Oh, there's no shade.
Oh, there's-
Absolutely no shade whatsoever.
Yeah.
And there are vendors that are very saddened by that. Next year, we'll be back up front.
Right, yeah.
Because they didn't tear down any trees, so
No.
that was good.
No, that is good.
Yeah.
Those are some very nice trees on the school property.
I know. I mean, the garden club has been planting them to represent all the trees on the island.
And they're very helpful if you're a vendor.
Yeah.
Believe me, it's a long day and
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The school parking lot, will that be utilized?
Not at all. That, we can't use that. It's just,
they're
it's,
digging it up.
Because I know it's,
it's all under construction.
oh, because I haven't been to the gym in a couple of days,
So
so,
it's under construction.
okay, because it's been open in the mornings, like a portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping, I didn't know they were gonna dig up the parking lot, so I walked the property with Mike. And so that's when he said, the parking lot, the side of the school where the vegetable garden is, and the front of the school, all under construction, all nice, big, deep pools.
You know, by the time this happens, because they are actually ahead of schedule, I think maybe that parking lot might become very,
If it is,
because
it'll be a godsend.
to be really honest with you, I talked to Margaret about it. I think the paving for that parking lot is going to be done prior to this, weeks in advance.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be helpful, that would be
Because then
helpful.
I'll move the porta potties over there, because it'll be much easier for the guy dropping them off
Okay.
to
Yeah,
just
right.
park, drop, and drive off.
Yeah.
Much easier.
If you are able to get parking over there, could we reserve a section of it for handicap parking or for elderly people? Because I'm just thinking about that sloping hill.
Yeah.
To get to the arts and crafts show.
If it is, great.
Designate some
If
of
it
it.
is, great.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this, oh, the map is gone. That one skinny section that ran kind of north-south,
Yeah.
we could turn that into a section for handicap, because then it's right next to that sidewalk and not too, pretty, almost level there. You know, it doesn't have the incline.
Okay.
Yeah. All right?
Great, thank you, John.
Okay.
Thanks.
And do I have to pay a fee this year? We didn't last year. I didn't know what was happening.
Didn't
this
pay it
year.
last year, you don't pay it this year.
Say it
You
again?
didn't pay it last year, you don't pay it this year.
Okay, all right, so just know whether I need to get you a check.
Do you find that the Green Expo enhances the Arts and Crafts Fair and vice versa?
Oh, it's a plus for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why I met with Tim Pertel, went over the whole, I keep pointing to that, went over the whole plan with him, and we walked the whole school section. And that's when we made the decision to definitely combine and to put one by the other.
Okay, great.
So it'll be a plus. And we're adding extra signage and all of that to guide people to Duval Road. Okay,
Great.
all right. Chief, you got anything?
Yeah, I just want to be realistic on the parking plan. Half of that designated area is not parkable. But gentlemen, please don't take this the wrong way. We will work with you, but I don't want the board to think for a second that they're not going to be parked down Smith Street, down Duval, down Thomas, School Street. There's maybe 50 spots at best in that lot. Where, if you remove from where the booths are going to be, there's a whole hill there on the west end of the tennis courts that is not
Right.
truly parkable. So,
Right.
but it's not to say that, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to get together with Sergeant Rando to go over a little bit more refined plan on this so that we can have our TCOs on top of it. I think that you should stripe the parking area adjacent to the tennis court if you can. People do far better with lines on the road.
Agree.
Trying to park and just definitely get with him on who's going to be the attendant in that field, because you're probably going to need at least 2 people in that field.
Okay, don't have that person yet, working with Tim on that, but I will do your suggestion of striping the field, the parking area, no problem.
The other thing is, phone call to Brian Dolger, just because I honestly think that because at the end of August, school's starting the following week and teachers come in early, the parking lot is going to be a high priority to get done early, not the reseating of the front. The parking lot is the priority.
Which is
So I
great
actually-
news.
So if Brian can tell you and Jim, oh, by the way, we plan on paving this thing and having this thing lined and everything else by August
That'd be wonderful.
15th, that's good news for you to know.
It is.
Then you
It
can
is.
plan that in.
I'll wait until around August 12, 14, 15, somewhere in that neighborhood.
He'll know now.
And they'll probably have a much better idea, and if it's not done already.
Yeah, he pretty much has, has talked to the people and has that targeted.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right.
okay.
Ken, thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
Tim, did you want to talk anything about the green options? At all? Green Expo?
Can we jump in?
Yeah, we just finished with
We
the,
just finished with the arts and
Oh,
crafts.
Green Expo, sorry, yeah, that's something else. No, I just sent out, should I get up?
sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now that you're an actor, I didn't know you had all that talent.
That is true.
Wow.
Should I sing it?
Bear with us, and we'll save that for later.
You'd have to bear with me. I just sent out to all the committees and other people this morning, the map of where it's gonna be. I was thinking CC22, next saw it.
I got it.
It's really a matter at this point of, we can get tables from Mike Dunning, just want to know a count, and that's it. We'll have maybe 2 or 3 other starters.
Who has the tents? When we got the tents?
Oh, I don't know, I do have to check into that.
With Brian.
Yep. But other than that, it's gonna be a little bit smaller this year. Just thought considering what we're doing.
Yeah.
And the situation, so
Good.
that's really it.
Thanks, Tim.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks.
Tim, the hours, are you sticking with the 10 to 2? Is that? Deb, you sticking with the 10 to 2? 10 a.m. to
No, it's 11 to 3,
11 to 3.
yes.
Okay. And next on the agenda is an update on the Fresh Pond Grant. We have Joe Fenora from the town and Peter Graham, who's the chairman of the WAC and also representing the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association.
Yes, I'm really here just to share an update that we are pursuing the grant application through New York State for the annual grant cycle due now extended to August 16th or 18th. But the purpose of the grant is to seek funding for the construction of our larger remediation project. So we had been before the board and before the WQI committee over the past few months seeking funding for the design documents and the design portion of the project. That phase is about to be complete, although not complete yet. So we haven't had a public presentation, certainly not in any formal capacity for our final design. However, it will be done in time for the grant application deadline. And so you'll see a resolution come before the board in the next couple of weeks authorizing the application to be sent in. The grant is for a maximum of $1 million with a 25% local match. We don't have the final number yet on the estimated construction costs, but that cap seems to fit nicely with what we expect the project cost to be, certainly under that limit. So those are numbers that we're comfortable with, and certainly it's a worthwhile pursuit in terms of funding. 75% coverage up to $1 million is substantial for a project like this. The reason why I feel very comfortable pursuing the application for the grant, even though we've not had a chance to publicly present the design documents, is that the design is something we've already presented. So the concept, which was to permanently restore vis-a-vis the removal of excess phosphorus in the sediment has already been discussed in a number of public forums. And so the design phase, which we're completing, is, I don't want to say a formality, but there's no changes to the project. The concept, the technical approach is still, more or less the same since it was originally discussed.
Joe, where are we with the first phase, removing the growth?
So that is a separate standalone project. We are waiting for the state DEC to approve our permits for that activity. That's a vegetation removal process, which was also partially funded by the WQI funding request. And we have a contractor and a vendor, contract executed and a vendor lined up to do the work. The permit and the design work was already done, but we're waiting for the state to say, you're clear to go.
Is there any kind of window on that?
Yes, there's a very sensitive window, and we are nearing, I don't want to say that deadline because it's not a hard date, but from a seasonal perspective, it needs to happen in the next couple of weeks. We're really hopeful that the state recognizes that. We've been trying to politely inquire as to what the status is.
This is New York State DEC, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, this is the growth, the highest growth period, the end of July, beginning of August, I would think. After that, the growth starts.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not just about, the permit being released, there's the logistics of kicking off the project after that. So, the window to perform this work this year is certainly narrowing. I don't want to sound pessimistic because I think there's still a strong opportunity for us to accomplish that. However, the silver lining is that once you get one of these permits, it's far easier to renew in subsequent years. And so in a worst case scenario, we had successfully completed the application and we would be able to renew in subsequent years, having all the pieces put together already, the permit application, the relevant consulting work, and even the sourcing and finding relevant contractors and vendors to do the work. So it would be a much easier effort to turn on. However, we're still trying to do that.
Does the bigger project hinge on this?
No,
That was my question.
no. This was in many ways, a stopgap measure, something we could do in the short term to have a positive impact on the pond. But it is not, is not part of any sort of critical path to the larger remediation project.
Timing of the expenditure. I think I'm confusing grants, but maybe not. This one is over a period of time? Like it's not $1 million in the first year?
That's right. There's two components to the cost of this particular rehabilitation project. We have the initial capital outlay for the equipment and the infrastructure. Then we have sizable operating costs. And so those numbers aren't finalized yet, but it differs from a traditional project in that all of the funds are in the initial outlay. So this project we understand to be on a scale of between 5 and 10 years. The operating costs probably represent about 5 to 7% of the total cost annually. So we'll have a substantial capital outlay to install the infrastructure. Then you'll have subsequent payments annually for operating the system, which would represent a sizable component of the grant reimbursement as well. So let's just say it was $1 million project and we were responsible for $250,000. It would be somewhere between probably 60 to 70% initially, with the remainder in the subsequent years.
So that figure that you put down, 600,000 in that last week's cost, approximately 600,000. So you're saying it's going to be somewhere between 600,000 and $1 million. It's an approximation.
Yeah, but those numbers should be shored up within the next week or two for us to have more strict discussions on.
Yeah, regardless, it's a 75-25% split.
That ratio is locked. Yep, and also the $1 million cap.
Right.
Okay. Those are just the constraints of the funding opportunity. I would also just add that this was ultimately always the approach for Fresh Pond. We recognized that the long-term solution was one that was going to be quite expensive and that would take some time. And so this particular funding opportunity is well aligned for the construction project. So I certainly don't feel like we're rushing this. I think this is the best course of action. It gives us probably the only reasonable option to start this project within 12 months. If we don't get this grant, that's when we'll have to revisit what the financial strategy will be for this project overall. We have a really great working relationship with the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association. They have not only contributed a tremendous amount of time and from a pretty broad base of members, but also have contributed financially every step of the way with this process. So that's something to consider as we look at the financial arrangement for the project over the next several years. We can count on them for continued assistance. They have been a great partner to the town thus far.
So I'm assuming Jennifer has weighed in on this and has worked with you?
Jennifer brought this to us.
Okay.
And so we're working closely with her, very closely with her to get this out the door in time.
For the public, Jennifer's our town grant writer.
The deadline on this is August 18th is the deadline?
Yeah, they extended.
16th or 18th, yeah, that was the deadline that was just extended. It's traditionally the end of July.
July 28th.
It's slated for this week, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the schedule of town board meetings is what's relevant here for the time.
We can approve this on August 8th.
That's right. Yep, that would be perfect.
We just have to think about where we're going to get our match from, because we like to put that.
WQI?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I guess we have enough information, because generally, like WQI is like operational things. Like, I don't know if the WQI monies could be used for that. We have to take a look at that.
Okay.
To see.
Yeah.
By before the August 8th meeting, we'll have hard numbers.
Right.
So we can talk, dollars and cents more about what that commitment would be.
Right.
Regarding the operational expense issue, that is one that is somewhat unique to this project. The guidance thus far from New York State has been that the operating expenses for this project would be considered the project effort. So in traditional grant funding, I use the example of the Crescent Beach bathroom. The grant covers the cost of the facility, but they don't cover the cost to operate it once you've installed it. Mm-hmm. This project is substantially different because the operating of the equipment is the actual project. It's like if you had a dredging operation, you don't just pay to get the dredge there. It covers the cost of running the dredge, the fuel, the operator, and that's how we're looking at this particular project. Mm-hmm. The only caveat, and the state has weighed in that is their approach for funding it. The only caveat is that the grant funds for a 5-year window. So if the operating of the system runs longer than 5 years, we would be outside of this particular funding award. So we could either agree to pay those operating costs ourselves in those subsequent years. It may be such that the project does not go past the 5 years. This is somewhat of an iterative process. Once the system's up and running, it may go, simply 6 years, or we finish in 5. But the funding from this particular grant award stops at year 5. So regardless of how we treat the operating expenses, that particular funding will stop at a very specific time period. And we would either, fill in the gap, or perhaps there's other funding opportunities that arise between now and year 5. And we can get the balance covered through there.
And at that point, we know how much it would cost because we've been doing it for 5 years. So we'll know
Yes.
what our anticipated
And
expenses.
presumably the cost will go down
Right.
as the project,
Lines.
it winds down and picks up in its own efficiency. Yeah.
On a calendar year of 365, the equipment that's removing the phosphorus, how many days is that throughout the entire year?
No,
It's only
no.
during.
The infrastructure will be there permanently,
Correct.
but there's a period of time which we can remove the phosphorus effectively, and then there are other periods where we can't
Okay.
because of the stratification of the pond. So it's not running 365 days of the year,
Okay.
but it
It
is.
may be
it is
running
there.
partially in the spring throughout the summer. Yeah.
Right, there'll be windows of operation, yeah, but the equipment and the infrastructure won't be removed.
Okay.
Are there any projections of how long it's gonna take?
Between 5 and 10 years.
Yeah.
So doing some quick and dirty numbers, if we get the grant, so I think our outlay in year one would be 175,000. If I go to the high side, 70%. So we could potentially go to WQI for the grant on that. And then our carrying costs for years 1 through 5 would be 17,500. So we could probably absorb that in budget, but then after year 5, 70,000.
Right.
Just in terms of writing, I know, Amber, you have a drafted resolution, so we would need to incorporate some of this into that. We can sit down and do that, but just so we know what we're getting into.
Yeah,
Yeah,
financial.
long term, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we can refine that
What the
once we
commitment's
have.
gonna be. Okay. Peter, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, there are just a couple of points I'd make. The main point that I would want to make is that this project is, some people will see this as 4 fresh pond and 4 fresh pond neighbors only, but I think it's truly for the entire island. To just one indication of that is that more than half of the membership of Fresh Pond Neighbors Association are non-pond front homeowners, people from across the island, to the Heights, to Hay Beach, et cetera. I also do want to make the point, Joe mentioned that WQI had funded work for the short-term cleanup. Actually, they hadn't funded work for the short-term cleanup, but work for the permitting of the short-term cleanup. The Fresh Pond Neighbors Association has committed to funding work for the short-term cleanup, and by short-term, we mean that it will cover a year, it will make things better for that season.
Sure.
Things will grow back. It has to be done each year, and we've committed to each year doing the short-term cleanup work until the larger project renders that unnecessary, which we expect to happen in the 5 to 10-year window. So therefore, it really is a long-term commitment of $10,000. At this point, the costs are $10,000. They'll go up over time each year. To that end, we've been tabling at the farmers market and at the IGA and have had enormous response, raising more than half of the money that we need to raise already. And we already had money for this year in our own budget. So we're in good shape for starting to go out to next year for funding that. And that again is entirely on the private portion of this private-public partnership. But beyond that, it's important to understand the impact of Fresh Pond on the entire community. Fresh Pond Neighbors Association has been very, very welcoming, trying to make sure, we've actually hung hooks for people's towels along the Fresh Pond Road on the outside of the private home there, along that fencing. We've engaged people on a kind of continuous basis, being very welcoming that this is a resource for the entire island. And it really is pretty much a black eye on the island, for the island, to have people come here and see this precious resource in such bad shape in the bad shape that it sometimes gets into. Beyond that, it's also important to understand that this is an important recharge for the aquifer itself. And within a year and a quarter, all of the water that is in Fresh Pond will flow underground into the 2 creeks, Dickerson and Monantic Creek, and then into our bays. And although the target of this project is to remove phosphorus sufficient to prevent harmful algal blooms in fresh water, incidentally, it will also remove nitrogen in excess of the amount that it would be removed had every homeowner, and some of the homeowners have already installed nitrogen reducing systems, more will, but had every homeowner done so, it would not reduce the nitrogen flowing into our creeks and bays by as much as this project will incidentally also reduce that. Beyond that, the aquifer itself is the pond itself is a window into the aquifer. Its depth corresponds very, very neatly with the entire depth of of our groundwater, at the entire thickness of groundwater at that point. At its 45 feet of depth, it comes within 5 feet of the saltwater interface below it. So we are seeing the entire volume of groundwater, if you extend that from Fresh Pond toward the center, that exists here. It is a reservoir of water for everyone when we start to need more look at public water in further outlying areas toward this watershed. This is where the water is. And then we have been doing, the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association for 6 years has been doing, James and I have been doing water sampling biweekly throughout the entire summer season. We lower a device called a kimmerer down to within 1.5 meters of the pond bottom and capture water samples, again, every 2 weeks and send them to the DEC for analysis. This project renders all of that transparent. You'll be pulling up water from the bottom of the pond, able to access, understand what's going on in the entire water column. So it's a project that fits neatly between things we're doing with shellfish restoration and in Menantic Creek with citizen science there, keeping Dickerson Creek well-dredged and well-maintained, with opening up dredging for Menantic Creek for tidal flushing. It fits very nicely between that and what we're doing to reduce nitrogen from the center outward.
Great, thank you very much.
Peter, while you're up there, just for the board's sake, that storm that we had about, I want to say 8-9 years ago, where we had the 10.5 inches of rain in the center of the town, parts of the center of the town flooded. And it got worse days after the rain stopped. And we then ran big hoses down 114 and pumped perfectly with water into the bay. Can the WAC take a look at, that was the rainstorm of the century. We know that these storms are not going to be 100 years apart any longer.
100-year events occur every 5 or 10.
So it may not be 10.5 inches, it may be 7 inches of rain, but you can anticipate that these storms are going to become more frequent on the Atlantic coast. Is there some thought process of where this water can be recharged into our aquifer as opposed to putting it out in the bay? And that would mean contacting the Sylvester Manors and the Meshamics and all the other places. And I remember, as I was on the Meshamic board, that the discussion was the critters that were nesting in that area, that we were going to pump it right off 114 into these big low spots in Meshamic. And there was concern about that. I think people have to weigh the pluses and minuses of pumping millions, tens of millions of gallons of perfectly good water into the bay, as opposed to putting it in someplace into our aquifer. So I know it's a big charge, and I know you guys have tons of work, but I would just love to be able to throw that out to you for future reference, because to me, that is, it's an unfortunate weather event, but we could capitalize on it, really do a major job on recharge of our aquifer.
Of course, this isn't Fresh Pond, Fresh Pond topic, but it's very, very dear to my heart, and I accept that charge that you're making of me.
Right.
I will say that the Gardner's Bay Country Club discussion that we are having right now I think constantly about the need to have a place to put water, because what happened in Vermont, what happened in along the Hudson, what happened in Albany is going to happen here at some point. It's happened here before, it will happen here again, it will happen here more frequently. We'll be facing hell and high water, greater droughts than we've had before, and heavier, more damaging rainfalls than we've had before. We desperately need a place to put water. So, and we also need to stop pumping specifically in the summer. So for Gardner's Bay Country Club to pump 1.2 million gallons of water in August alone, to my eye, that's unacceptable. To my eye, that should be water that has been captured, stored, and then used to recharge in the summer. In the winter, so we don't have so much of a problem. We watch the well for 40 years. We've been watching the wells very carefully. They go up, they have an enormous amount of water contained within them in the winter. 9 billion gallons of rainfall comes along. 4 billion of that can't fit in our aquifer. And just from its weight, it's pushed out of the saltwater interface. We lose that winter water. We live in a river, it's not a non-renewable resource, it's a renewable resource. And we live along a river that flows from the center of town out to its edges, and that water could be used. Better to use it, to store it and use it in the summer to recharge than to lose it out the saltwater interface. So absolutely, I believe that and you mentioned Sylvester Manor should be a participant in this process. It's very, and Mashamak should be a participant in this process. We can't do it alone as a town.
Correct.
And so we do need these partners, these private organizations and partners. And so whatever the dynamics are between us and them, we've got to make them work.
Okay, the next two items on the agenda have to do with inside waters. We got a notice from the DEC about new regulations statewide. It's more of a, I guess it's more of a preemptive strike that they're not basing it on current issues. Joe, you want to talk to it?
Joe, before you, I think it will be helpful if I just set the stage with the law.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and perhaps the outcome, what the current closures are, and we haven't had public discussion about that.
Yeah, so I'll lay out the law and then you can chime in on that. All right, so because people are like, how is the state telling us what to do?
Right.
And so the answer to that is you have to look at Environmental Conservation Law, Section 13-0319, which says the DEC may adopt regulations with respect to the harvesting of shellfish and other things. And such regulations shall be drawn in such a manner as to provide adequate sanitary control over all shellfish offered for sale and distribution in the state. And then it goes on to say in Section 13-0307, the department periodically shall examine all shellfish lands within the marine district. Begs the question, what is the marine district? They have it defined as the marine district shall include the waters of the Atlantic Ocean within 3 nautical miles from the coastline and all other tidal waters within the state. Very broad. And you take a look at the regulations that it references. So here's the state law, here's the authority. And then you look at the regulations that are adopted by the DEC, and you look at section 47.4 of the Marine Fisheries Certification of Shellfish Lands Regulations. And it says, when the commissioner determines that shellfish might be hazardous for use as food for human consumption, he shall take such actions as he deems necessary to protect the public health and welfare. They haven't yet updated the regulations because it just says he.
Right.
But other than that, the commissioner may prohibit shellfishing activities such as, but not limited to, the harvesting. Commissioner may advise the general public of this closure. Then you look at 47.2, which is the general prohibitions. No person shall harvest shellfish for use as food and/or other purposes from uncertified shellfish lands. That's what the DEC has done in this particular situations. Now, what they have to do to uncertified land, you look at section 47.3, and it talks about examinations of sanitary condition of shellfish lands, and it lays out the procedure that they have to follow. So they have to conduct what's called a sanitary survey, and the sanitary survey must include shoreline pollution source surveys and water quality evaluations. I think we have to thoroughly scrutinize that and make sure that it's done right. And if you look at 47.3, it talks about what they're looking for and standards and things like that. So this is what they use as a basis to uncertify underwater land, and that's what they did here. So I just wanted to set the stage for Joe, just to put this into context.
Good.
So the outcome that's impacting the community now is that a new sanitary survey was done, as they are scheduled to do, and as a result of new federal policy, which is ultimately the guidance for the state law and the state policy.
A sanitary survey was done when, and all these waters, or?
Let me back up.
Yeah.
So the FDA performed a regular audit of the New York State last year, and they do so every 3 or 4 years, something like that. And the FDA sets the standards for the state to fall within. It's more vague intentionally, and then the state crafts their own policy to make sure it fits within federal guidelines. the federal policy that's impacting us now is a risk assessment towards anchorages, specifically anchorages where boaters and vessels are sized to accommodate wastewater tanks, both heads and containment, and also an anchorage where those vessels may be staying for periods of time where one would use or have the need to empty those tanks. And so what's happened across the state is that areas known to fit that criteria have been deemed too risky, absent any other enforcement or control policy on a local level. So the FDA is putting pressure on governments like the New York State, agencies like New York State DEC, and saying, we recognize that you have an anchorage here, Sag Harbor has an anchorage over there are many in Southold Town, and saying, we recognize that this is a significant risk to shellfish sanitation, not necessarily because there's an active or ongoing or known water quality issue, but that there could be, particularly in a situation where you couldn't do an immediate water quality test. You have a holiday weekend where there's a number of boats congregating, and legal or illegal, a boater or a group of boaters discharge their wastewater tanks in an area where they're not supposed to. That inadvertently poses a contamination risk to any shellfisher, particularly commercial shellfisher. And they deem that risk now to be unacceptable, and therefore the closure of this particular area of West Neck. The closure extends to another area, which includes moorings, because our town policy allows for overnight stays on moorings, and the moorings are often awarded to boats of that size that may contain or have or use onboard wastewater systems. So,
Joe, are you saying West Neck Bay or West Neck Harbor or both? And the creek?
this is the area, do we have the?
Near Shell Beach is the harbor.
Inside of Shell Beach.
There's a pretty, the state has issued updated charts to show the specific closure areas, but in concept, it's a set distance from shore to capture the designated anchorage and the high concentrations of moorings along Shell Beach.
That's Cockles Harbor. That's Cockles Harbor still. Keep going.
Yeah, so this is the one that we're specifically talking about. In fact, the closure area in Cockles Harbor is for the same purpose. It's the transient mooring area. And so the same cause is now related to, or the same use is now related to this particular closure. Bo has done an excellent job at maintaining a dialogue with the representative at the state who oversees these particular closure areas. They are the team that quite literally assesses and draws the lines as to where they think this is most appropriately located. And they have indicated to us that they are under this pressure from the FDA because of its designation, but that there is some room to make sure we're working within their, they recognize the problem here. They recognize that this is a contentious issue for the public. They recognize that more or less on every given year, there's less and less space available with competing user groups for Bayman and for shell management. And so there may be some outcome here that's mutually beneficial. It's probably going to revolve around us as a township creating an enforcement policy and procedure to prevent illegal discharges in the area. The FDA, it seems at this stage, has not been satisfied with the state performing that enforcement, probably because they just don't have the resources to be everywhere all the time. And the DEC has made reference to Sag Harbor and their harbor master having an acceptable policy in the eyes of the FDA for enforcement. And that may be the pathway here for reducing the size of these closure areas, reducing the period of the closure. And Bo has kept that opportunity open. So that is my recommendation for the next step here, is to collaboratively engage with our state regulator to see what service we can provide or what what teamwork we can arrange.
Pump out boats, is that the sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I think it's the broader picture, and I don't want to say that there's a specific checklist that we have to hit, but it seems like it is up to the state agency and then ultimately for the FDA to, bless this policy. But it's fairly vague and open-ended, so I think it's in our interest to put together something that is both achievable for us, repeatable for us, and work collaboratively with them to get this policy accepted. And that perhaps is the best way to get these closures reduced or eliminated.
Couple of comments. Bill Garrity is in seventh heaven with this, this topic. Because Mr. Garrity has been on this issue for the 8 years that I've been on the WMAC, hitting it very hard. On any one weekend during this, particularly during July and August, there could be a minimum of 15 to 20 boats, on an average more like 30 to 40 boats tied up in this area, in that Anchorage area, to the point where I've seen 75 to 90 boats on Labor Day weekend, and the boats don't move. So they're tied up, and on every boat, there are 4, 5, 6 people. And they don't move. And they're eating, drinking, swimming in that area, and then leaving. So a couple of comments. Number one is they are not breaking the chain and going out, to be pumped out, going to one of our 3 marinas to go get pumped out. My second comment is, John would attest to this, 10 years ago, even less, only had 1, that was Cockles Marina, that actually performed the service. Now we have the service, or maybe 2. We had it at Deering Harbor as well.
The close is a couple, so we're going to be doing 50.
For 50 years.
Yeah.
So now we do have that service at West Neck that has been up and operational there. The police department, we keep asking the question, Bill would ask the question, how many times when you go through there, do you actually board boats to check on Y valves and actually test the water and actually test for this? The answer was about 3 or 4 years ago, very rarely.
No, it's not.
It was not, okay, I would stand corrected. It was really not. It was outside our jurisdiction, we didn't see that as our issue. And now I think we convinced them that if you don't do any of this, if you don't come out and periodically check, as we do for cars, for registrations and all different types of DWI checkpoints and things like that, people get sloppy and people just, and then Bill commented on that, never forget the comment on the number of Y valves that he said will cut, that when they bring their boats back in to be serviced at the end of September, October, that a lot of times that they've been filled, that they flush and it goes right out. It doesn't go to a holding tank at all. So if we're going to correct this, obviously, within our own bay constables, we need to make this a higher priority. We need to be visiting these areas on a daily basis throughout the summer. And even if you check 1 or 2 boats, it could be 30 boats there. It sends the message out. People talk.
I was going to say, it would get around the boating.
It would get around quickly. Second question is, the future boards have to discuss whether, and we discuss this back and forth, whether we want to go hand in hand with another community, we'll get our own pump out boat. Again, that's been kicked, it's expensive, and there's lots of reasons why we haven't done it, but there might be some reasons why we should be doing it, or at least looking into it.
WQI funds are usable for that purpose, which is, I think, a new piece of information this year.
The third comment is one on a long-term basis for capital planning to look at, and that's when you see the cup, the way Shell Beach is shaped, and the problems that we have right within that area, up the creek and into the bay, way up with flushing, is putting some type of reconnecting, somewhere around where the staircase goes down, opening up and putting some type of, like we do at Second Bridge, for instance, which, right where BJ, right, it functions to help flush. Imagine if that was closed off and that water was stagnant in there, as bad as it can get now, it would be 10 times worse. So that's an expensive proposition, but I'll tell you, that might pair lots of fruits. People are very spoiled about wanting to use Shell Beach 12 months a year to go out on. So that really needs to be looked at more carefully. Can it be done? How expensive is it? Is there monies available to be able to do that? But having that area flush much better, which would have positive effects all the way up the creek into the bay, might be something for not just shellfish, but for everybody's sake, a doable situation and a long-range plan. Doesn't have to be done, ASAP, but it's something that we should start to investigate. That's all I have on my feelings on that. Looking at the bigger picture, how we can clean that area up.
So are you going to contact Sag Harbor? Will that be Bo?
Bo already did.
Yeah.
Bo already did. He's getting more details about their specific plan because it was referred to as satisfactory. And so we'll continue that dialogue. And I think in the short term, beyond that, we'll be trying to have a call with the state to put together a package
Right.
with their guidance as to how to resolve this.
Maybe also to let them know that we're testing regularly?
I don't know if they know that.
I would add that I've seen a lot of the discussion. We've never had a problem there. There's never been an illness. The water tests good, and that's great. That's not the crux of this particular problem.
But I have an issue with that, though. I have an issue with the DEC saying that, based on a hypothesis, that they're going to proactively close areas when the state regulations clearly say it had a condition preceding to these closures or deeming them uncertified is a sanitary survey. So if the sanitary, and it says it's clear, shall be accompanied by a sanitary survey. I don't like the fact that we're voluntarily allowing them to close our.
I'm with you, and don't let me certainly portray myself as, being the advocate for, more shellfish closures. I am with you on that, and certainly I've been on the other side of this as well, where, I've been negatively impacted by these types of decisions. I can tell you from my own experience that it's best to work together in this particular case, and I can also tell you that the FDA is the driver behind this particular policy approach.
No, and that's fine. But I think we could have a dual track where we work with them and also say, show us the evidence, show us the science. Where is this survey that says, because again, I'm not making, their own regulations say you have to have that survey.
And I don't know that they didn't do this survey. I'm just not familiar with when the last survey was done.
No, absolutely. So that's why I'd like us to see it and scrutinize it. And
Sure.
Because based on that and based on our testing, I don't think we should, proactively close. These are these people's livelihood.
So Joe, the purpose of today was just to bring it out to the public so they
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
So the way I read it was we have 4 options. We can close the anchorage areas. That's option 1.
You mean as an immediate,
These are options.
we
We can shrink the anchorage areas. Then it wouldn't have as big a spread. We can do what you said, we can increase inspections. I think we did like about 20 inspections this year. So we went from 0 to 20, which is a start. And with that, the water testing, that goes along with that.
right?
Or the last one is we can assert home rule, which kind of goes with what Steven's saying.
There's another one too. Besides shrinking the anchorage areas, I think you reduce the likelihood of people dumping if you say you can only stay one night. That's the other.
Yeah, I think
Well, and John and I just had a quick discussion on this earlier. Peter Reich had mentioned in a letter, the way to get around our overnight is, it says you can stay 48 hours, then you have to leave. So in theory, if you leave for 2 hours, you can come back and, you can stay there all summer, I guess.
Yeah,
So there's something we would have to look at.
right. Yeah, when Joe's done with this, we'll go, the crux of Peter's letter was this electronic anchoring, but he talks about what you're talking about too.
I think those are all options. Many of them end with different results, so it's not 4 routes to the same.
And we don't want to cut our nose to spite our face, but we want to, we want to assert ourselves and make sure we're heard.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is best done in conjunction with the state, because perhaps their position is that I don't care if there's no overnight stays there, that's still a concern. And perhaps their position is, I don't care if there's no designated anchorage, this is a known space for congregation. I'll give you another example of similar closures that are preemptive. If there are too many birds that congregate in a given area, that will also justify either a seasonal or a full-time closure of a shellfish area. So it ranges, and simply saying we're making this minor change, you may make the situation worse for another user group and still not resolve the baseline issue for the shellfish event. So all of those options are on the table, and we should do that with the state to make sure that we will get ultimately everything we're seeking.
And just to reemphasize what Joe said, Bo is really on top of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll
John,
work.
anything, or please?
John Needham, WMAC. I'm really gratified to hear that Joe was on top of this.
And Bo.
A couple of things I'd like to add, just from a historical basis. The fact that we weren't boarding vessels a couple of years ago was, as I understand it, a concern that was not allowed. It was prohibited to board a person's vessel unless there was some
Probable cause.
something illegal going on, probable cause. Thank you very much. That has since, our policy has since changed, and they are now boarding vessels.
Yeah.
This is, I'm extremely disappointed because, yes, there have been concerns, and we haven't been able to document whether they're legitimate or not. And then just this year, a newly appointed WMAC member, Matt Williamson, I tasked him to go to the county because they do sampling. They collect samples, but their department is only for collection. That's all they do. And then it's there for us to, or anybody who wants that data to go to them. Matt went to them and got the data, the conclusion was, and he gave a presentation here, that our waters are pretty damn good. In addition to that going on this year, we also, with Albert PJ, got the town aligned with an outfit called the Blue Water Task Force. So now, and this is probably the 6th week in a row.
Yeah.
They sampled Bo, I guess, or Bo's, somebody in the Marine Harbor Master collects water from the anchorage in West Neck, the anchorage in Cockles Harbor, and somewhere in Darien Harbor. That sample is spirited over to Sag Harbor. There's a certain time frame you gotta go within, and then somebody from there, it's like the Pony Express, takes it to Southampton. Somebody from there takes it to a lab, a certified lab in the Hampton Bays. And on Wednesday morning, it's published. It's called the Blue Water Task Force. So that data is on there for every collection on Mondays throughout the season, and I think they do it every other week in the wintertime.
Yeah, it's all through the year, yeah.
Yeah.
So finally, now we are accessing data that either says, yes, there's pollution issues, or no, there's not pollution issues. We're in pretty darn good shape. I think there's a lot to be said for the 3 pump out stations that are available 8 hours a day, every day of the summer. In Cockles Harbor Marine, I can only speak for our pump out stations available from May 1st to December 1st, every day. You don't have to call up anybody, we're there. One of the main reasons that other municipalities, and I'll finish this up here, like Sag Harbor, went to boats is because of the pump out station area that they installed is inaccessible. You can't get to it unless you back your boat into a slip. It's wide as you need to the wall. You can't get to it. So their solution was to go with a boat. Take the pump out to the boat that needs it done. You know, our solution at the time, I'm not gonna say it's perfect right now, but since we have 3 separate harbors, we had this big discussion with the town. Let's put it at each fuel dock. Now it's accessible. In fact, Cockles Harbor Marina has 2 locations, over 150 feet of face dock that you pull up to, get pumped out. And proposes that their fuel dock and Island Boatyard is their fuel dock, so they're accessible to the port. So I just wanted to make that distinction and put that out there. And this has been something we have been, Cockles Harbor and Cozy's and Island Boatyard have been participating for decades. Decades.
John, they're all good points. Would it take a lot for you to be able to gather information on an average day, what those three pump out areas take, how many boats come in? I know it varies depending on weekends or weekdays, just an average, a range. We get anywhere from 8 to 30 boats, depending on whether, a day, daily.
Right.
It would be interesting to know how many boats, because we know about how many boats are in the area on a given time. Would just be interesting to know approximately. Do you guys service a
I
lot
don't
more?
charge when I do it myself for somebody, so I don't keep a record of it. But yeah, I can make some calls around.
Okay, thank you.
But
I think there's
please
just
also keep in
information.
mind, it's a federal law that you cannot discharge.
Right.
It's a town law, you cannot discharge. So anybody doing that is violating the law and is subject to a fine. And as far as these Y valves where the nylon ties have been cut, I'm not advocating this, so don't misunderstand me. It's perfectly legal to dump outside the 3 mile limit.
Right.
So in order to do that, yes, they should, if that happens, then they should retie those things. But it's perfectly legal. And again, I'm not advocating that by any means.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Okay, next is another, I'm sorry, Peter, go ahead.
So it seems to me, especially given what Jim was saying about the lack of tidal flushing in West Neck Harbor, what we have here is a classic situation of a resource overuse. And I think there's overuse going on here because there's no charge for using this area as a pop-up marina. So I think all the different solutions that you guys have been considering, they're all interesting and good. I think the long-term solution that Jim is mentioning is something that I would stay focused on across the decade. I think that especially since we're now opening up tidal flushing for Menantic, since the county is now going to open up the mouth of Menantic Creek, we're looking at, and when you look at the area of concern, it kind of slides off almost right at Wade's Beach. So the contact, and clearly Shell Beach itself is a used beach so I think that in restricting usage to appropriate levels, I wonder if the town can also make that self-financing.
If we did moorings, but.
Again, limiting the number of boats that are allowed to stay.
Yeah. But
by not making it be something just ad hoc that, people have decided, oh, it's free to go here and all my friends go here. And so I've got, now so pretty soon you got 70, 80 boats.
Yeah, but the data that John mentioned, taken every Monday now for the last month, 5 weeks, it's really interesting that we only got to the high or medium bacteria level in the three areas, Deering Harbor, West Neck, Cockles Harbor, Anchorage, after the rain on July 17th.
Right.
In 2 of the 3 areas went right back to acceptable, better than acceptable, healthy, good waters. What 2 areas? The anchorages. What area is staying high? Deering Harbor. Interesting, right? Probably has less to do with boats and more to do with
Runoff, fishes.
runoff and a sewer treatment plant that maybe is not operating.
Flushing out into which again speaks to Jim's point that tidal flushing is often a very important part of our solution.
As John's been saying to me, beating me up for a year and a half, that until there's data, until the data is there, that it is boats. And I think this kind of helps us.
DJ, I think that it's important to understand that the issue of overcrowding in that space is not purely an environmental issue.
Okay, that I see.
I know exactly where you're coming from. I'm not a boater, and I'm big on user fees.
And you need a
I've always said, and quite honestly, I was in the Anchorage area this weekend with my daughter and son-in-law, who don't live on Shelter Island. And I've always said, there's 100 boats here. They don't give a dime to this island. Maybe 3 of them go have lunch at the island boatyard. So I understand what you're saying.
They're avoiding going to the island boatyard because it's going to cost them something.
So I understand what you're saying, but
I can't get a slip.
in the general don't be the Grinch, what do you do?
Well, you might ask them to make a contribution because in fact, if we're going to do this here, we're going to need pump out boats, we're going to have expenses.
Yeah, between 6 and 7:30 every morning during those, especially on weekends at Shell Beach, there's a small watercraft that comes off the larger boat, usually a rowboat or some rubberized type of thing with the dogs.
Yeah.
And they go on the beach and they just go. I've never seen anybody picking that
Yeah,
stuff
right.
up
Yeah.
on the beach, and people frequent the beach. It's something that we're a little lax on, and it's,
Well, when we talked about the comprehensive plan, we mentioned that maybe the waterways should look at, the Waterways Management Committee should look at, what's the total build out of moorings? Maybe we should look at what's the total
Build out of Anchorage.
of Anchorage, that's, I remember 25 years ago, we shrunk the Anchorage area. I think it grew back again, so it's,
What is the capacity?
yeah.
Yeah, we'll,
well, the biggest concern for the police department and Bay Constables is that it does go into the recreational areas where, inside West Neck, where it's a recreational area, people used to water ski and do certain things, that they're not within the framework of the Anchorage area. And then with patrol boats come by, they tell the people that they try to move them in, but then they clutter even closer together. The other thing is East Brandon Pond, is adversely affected because it doesn't flush.
Right.
If that would be opened up, we talked about that on Saturday, prior to them closing that down, East Brandon Pond was a healthy pond. It does affect a lot more than just what you think.
Yeah.
It's all those water bodies that come off these
Tidal flushing is a fundamental.
streets,
yeah.
Okay, part two of our inland waters. Again, this is an issue Peter Reach brought up, and it's one of those, who would have thought? Apparently with modern technology.
Jerry, can I just read from
Oh,
his
sure.
letter, because he really
Sure.
does a good job
Yeah.
of explaining it. He was in West Neck Harbor, he saw a 65-foot powerboat in the middle of the harbor. He assumed it was anchored, but Harbor Master Mahoney was out there, so he suggested to the owner of the boat that he might want to move, because the harbor master's going to ticket you for anchoring in a spot that's not an anchorage. The guy said, I'm not anchored, I'm on Skyhook, which is a dynamic positioning system integrating your GPS, bow thrusters, the boat's propulsion system to maintain the boat's position within a meter or two and 1 degree of heading. And dynamic positioning, just so you know, started on deep sea oil rigs to hold them in exact position when it's too deep to attach to the bottom. So technically, they're not anchoring. They couldn't be given a ticket. But reality is that they're anchoring and they're interfering with other uses of that harbor, of that area, space.
Well, anchoring is not the right word. We have to come up with another word.
Right. They're dynamically positioned. They're loitering.
Well, no. So he actually came up with a great suggestion, is to amend the definition of anchoring and add, or by maintaining a constant position by use of any dynamic positioning system for more than 15 minutes. So I think he did my job for me, and
We
I thank
appreciate it.
him, and I think we should go forward with that amendment.
And his other suggestion was, he has mentioned, he's out rowing daily, that there is a boat from Sag Harbor that seems to be using our anchorage as a mooring field, that it's keeping, the boat is staying there. And at least once, he says he knows the boat was there for 3 days in a row, which violates the code. And he's suggesting that the code, which currently says shall not anchor a boat in any of our transient anchorage areas for more than 48 hours in a 72-hour period. He said if you extend that, the suggestion is to extend that 48 hours in any 1 week period. And he thinks that would help sort of abuse of our welcome mat.
We can make those two amendments and have a hearing on it and see
Yeah. What people
what the
think.
public say.
Okay, good.
John, is that the future, this positioning thing?
Yeah, in fact, there's even a rumor,
Come on up.
Have it up again, sorry.
I don't know if Bo documented it or not, but there's a rumor that there was a vessel off of Sunset Beach and the crew and its captain left the boat.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow.
Peter's nephew documented that.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
That's a vessel not under command.
Right.
It's all legal.
Wow.
Coast Guard.
Can we do a salvage operation on such a lake? Just wondering, I mean, I'm swimming out there.
That particular situation is a violation of the
Right.
Coast Guard regulations, and he could get called in on that.
Yeah, especially with a license at
What was
stake.
the question?
But now with AI, is it really unmanned?
Yeah.
That's the
Yes,
thing.
it's still, because it could disconnect. If you lose that connection to the service, now your
Yeah.
boat is literally adrift, unmanned, without control.
Yeah.
So now you just have a floating,
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's
Disaster.
fail safes and stuff, you know, AI will come up with fails.
I mean,
Jerry's question was, do you think dynamic positioning is the way, the future? It's got to come down in price.
well, I mean, I think some of
Yes.
these high-end vessels are coming with it
Yeah,
already.
standard, yeah, yeah.
Somebody reminded me it's particularly concerning. Well, I guess it's coming up, but New York State doesn't even require a license to drive a boat.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Crazy.
it's always amazing.
That's why you see some of the crazy things you do out on the water.
I believe that is going to be phased in.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
License? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a safety thing for the kids, but I don't know, is it required?
Yeah, there's a requirement, I don't know the exact date, but if you were born after such a
Okay.
year, you have to get a safety license, boating license.
But yes, it is
Okay,
a feature
but
that's
something we should
being
address.
advertised and being promoted by the manufacturers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That action of not, no pilot with dynamic positioning is not legal for commercial vessels, but for private yachts, it is still permitted, even though there is no standard or certification for those particular activities.
Is a private vessel, so it's a yacht that gets rented out, is that still a private vessel? If it gets chartered? Yeah, okay.
Yes, yes. Commercial meaning like
Fishing,
yeah,
transportation.
working vessels. Yeah.
Oil tanker.
Subject to IMO and SOLAS certifying. So they don't permit it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the next step with this?
We're gonna make some amendments and set it for a public hearing.
Okay.
So again, so we don't have to waste time and inject more delay. I don't think we need another work session because we just
No.
discussed
Yeah.
what the amendments would be. So I think I'll just draft it and we'll set it for a public hearing. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, next
Stephen,
one.
can you push that our way before you go to the public hearing? I'd like to run it by the Bay Constables and really look at the feasibility of enforcing.
Good point.
We don't check boats in on a 48-hour basis. And so that I know it's in the current code, but I just want to be realistic to our abilities.
No, that makes sense,
to
Chief.
enforce certain statutes. So if you just you give it a week, and we might get other good public feedback in the meantime too. Based on this meeting.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely meet up with you, Chief. Thanks.
Thank you.
You don't chalk them like the tires?
Yeah.
Right, so when you think of it from that perspective, Jerry, it's an excellent point because, when Jim's telling us there's 90 boats in there, just think about what that means. And my last comment is, look, being here for more than 35 years, our boating community is a great community. I don't want anybody to leave this meeting thinking that we have a sewage issue in any of our harbors. I mean, John Needham highlighted it. We have great marinas and a great boating community, and the people that come and use our waters are largely the same group of people that are awesome. So our water quality is good. I just don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking that we have a real issue here. I mean, we maybe get one sewage complaint a year at most.
No.
And that's exactly my point. You nailed the right on the
I
head.
agree with you, Steve.
Because DEC should not willy-nilly close our bays based on supposition.
Yeah.
We have data, hard data, plus anecdotal evidence that we don't have an issue. And so we should be fighting this, I think.
Well,
But I don't want us to suggest there's an issue when there isn't one.
No, and I think also, Jim, the data that we now have from Surfrider is clearly showing that it was a rainfall event. And in the absence of a rainfall event, even with anchorages being used, East Cockles Harbor and West Neck stay pretty clean. They stay very clean, not pretty, they're very clean. Deering Harbor has an issue, but it's for different reasons. It's not the boating community.
And the last thing I would throw out there to the credit of our animal control officer, she's at our public beaches daily, doing spot checks for dogs on the beaches. Jim, if you want us to add that Shell Beach area, we will gladly do that. But she is on that with dogs on beaches and all public bathing areas. So
It's only early morning on Shell Beach. You know, it's not an issue during the day. It's an early morning issue. I've been down there 6:30, and it's not one or two dogs. If there's an animal on board, that's when it comes to shore.
Not a problem, Jim.
Obviously, so-
Stella?
Hi, thanks for taking the comment at this point. I just want to be very clear. I know there was an off the cuff comment just made about the wastewater treatment plant, and it's operating fine. We've got all the stats to prove it. I'd be happy for anyone on the board to come in. We can talk it through, but the issue at Deering Harbor has nothing to do with the wastewater treatment plant in the Heights.
Got you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the affordable housing first responder priorities. We're brought to our attention that Southold is making an effort to put in their list of priorities, first responders get a first priority. And apparently it's not just if they are currently first responders, but if they were going to move to the community and become first responders. Stephen, did you want to?
Yeah, that's not entirely true. So what they did was they amended their findings or looking to do that. And so I would prefer to do it if you're going to do it in a more substantive provision of the code, but they're just doing the findings. And they're going to give preference in affordable housing opportunities to those who are engaged in volunteer services as firefighters and/or first responders. And they define firefighter as one who is duly certified and trained to engage in firematic services and has performed such services in the county of Suffolk in good standing for 3 years, the 3 years period immediately prior to qualification. So you
have to be within that town.
Not that town, but you had to be a 3 year, at least a 3 year long volunteer. So they're looking to bring people in from outside that are volunteers to fill the gap.
We wouldn't mind doing that either.
What?
We wouldn't mind doing that either.
Yeah, correct. So that's something you can explore.
And did they go into the details, like the people, they have to guarantee that they can stay?
Yeah, the last section is any such firefighter / first responder must maintain good standing at all times to maintain minimal qualifications for such housing status. So they
Wow,
have to be
you could get booted from the housing if you,
I don't know how legal that is, but
yeah.
that's what they're putting in there.
You're investigating.
Yeah, so, but we have within our code, section 51.7, the housing registry, where you have to be income eligible, a US citizen, to apply. And then we have our own priorities, where if you lived and worked, both, you live and work, for at least a year before you apply, you got the top priority. If you merely lived here at least a year before, you got second priority. If you just work here, don't live here, you get third priority. If you previously lived here, a minimum of 1 year when you did live here, then you get fourth, and then fifth is all others. And then, so that's how our system is currently based. So if we were to do this, we'd have to decide where in that priority you want to put the volunteer firemen. So we first got to define whether we want people who are active just on Shelter Island or active countywide. And then if you want to make them first, if we have a compelling empirical need for volunteers.
We talked about if we did a lottery system, and you just mentioned a number of criteria, and let's say you got a ping pong ball for each one of those things. I might have 5 ping pong balls, Amber might have 2. And then you put them all in the drum.
Yeah.
Is that something you can do?
Yes, we're going to look into that. But, like in this particular situation, it's my understanding that if you and Amber were going head to head for one spot,
Right.
and you lived and worked here, but Amber just lived here,
Yeah.
you would get it. there's no ping pong balls. So it's each category, you go to the next one, go to the next one. And then, so like volunteer fireman would be the top,
Yeah,
and then you go next to work and live here.
okay.
Then just,
Another thing I would like to see the town look at is, we're concerned about the number of EMS that we have here on the island. You know, obviously fire department staff, but particularly EMS. The retirement of Phil Powers and the thousands of calls that he went on, his credentialing, he was so, amount of coursework that man took to be able to perform the duties that he did was extraordinary. So I don't think we should be treating all people exactly the same. What is the town board prepared to do for our EMS, first responders, to encourage them, to provide incentives for them, to take additional coursework, to save us money that we are now spending, to take outside people in, to be able to cover us 24/7, 365 days a year. We're spending in excess of $200,000. Why can't some of that money be better spent by creating incentives, whatever those incentives are? There are different rungs, just like in teaching, you end up with a bachelor's and then a master's degree, and then you work to a PhD, but there are different things in between.
So are you suggesting like a stipend because you became an AEMT?
I would think that sitting down with people that have, and a small group of people, be able to brainstorm those different ideas, whether they're tax incentives, or other things, whether they're stipends or other incentives that can be provided that would encourage people, because no longer are you asking people to take the refresher in CPR and basic first aid, and the coursework now is enormous to handle these very sophisticated pieces of equipment in an ambulance. The average person doesn't have the time or the desire to be, they want to give their time, they want to help their community. But a guy like Phil, it took losing Phil for me as a board member to understand, wow, what a loss to this town. So you can't afford to lose the people at the higher end of the spectrum that are that qualified. We need to do something with the number of people we attract into the EMS and fire department, and we need to do something about the quality of their backgrounds and education. If we are true, and not only housing, but there's other things that we can do to provide incentives for these people, and I think they deserve it.
okay, and if I didn't make it clear, it's firemen and first responders. Southold's doing any housing opportunities.
Yes.
And that would be included here.
Right.
Jim, we did, Meg and I went and listened to a commissioners meeting. There were a couple of officers there as well last night. And we did discuss trying to improve the incentives, that should go into the comp plan as a suggestion for the next decades or 5 years.
As a way to improve recruitment.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. It is for recruitment and retention. It's the name of the game all the time. It's one thing to recruit people into the thing, it's another thing to retain them over decades.
Right. I think there's a stability right this moment, but everybody sees that as a fragile stability. So maybe, again, for the next iteration of the town government.
And I have to thank Sergeant Thielberg. I think he's done a phenomenal job recruiting young people in, but again, retaining them and getting them incentive, providing those incentives for them to take that additional education is critical to the overall success of EMS.
So Stephen, you're going to follow up on that.
Yep.
Okay. Next on the list is an interesting, smoking on Taylor's Island.
Oh, but let me, that was from my committee. I wasn't actually at the meeting, but I got an email. So there's, in our town code, it just says no smoking at two places. Louise Beach and Wayne's Beach. That's it. So then Taylor's Island said, well, we're kind of an old wooden building. It would make sense to have no smoking on this island, and it's dry, the grass. Just, there's an obvious one. And then we had one of our great highway guys come in and find Meg and I yesterday and say, we got to stop the smoking everywhere. Like, I'm picking up so many cigarette butts. He said I have to stop because otherwise I'm just never going to get anything else done. Just everywhere. So
It was like people putting them out on the pavilion.
Yeah.
Just so you understand, the reason we stopped smoking at Crescent Beach
Yeah.
and Wade's Beach was because marijuana became legal. That's the only reason we stopped it. So this is something really.
I mean, I'm talking cigarettes.
Yeah, I know.
Marijuana doesn't have a filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the filter.
No, this was, yeah.
This is-
Not that I know that.
This is-
So I was gonna say, part of the complaint was that there's no signage at those two beaches to inform people of the fact that they're not allowed to smoke there. So even if it's small signage on the rails as you walk down to the beach, it says no smoking, no smoking, and maybe just one sign with all the other signs, just so people are aware of the fact that that is a family beach and you're not supposed to smoke there. Same thing with Wade's Beach, just on the pavilion, even on the little side, just put one of the small signs that says no smoking.
Just a symbol.
Just so people understand that on those two locations, there's no smoking.
But I'd like to change the code to
You want
be
it
no
town-
smoking town
Any
properties.
town property.
Yeah, CPF properties, I mean.
Taylor's Island is a no-brainer. I mean, with it, I mean, that it doesn't have to be within the cabin. There's grasses all around there. It does get dry. It's wind blown. You discard a cigarette there, you hop back in your boat and starts a fire there. We put too much money into Taylor's Island to have something mishap at that.
It goes into the code, and then we also get the signage. And that's what I'm suggesting. Should we just, Chelsea, you can go ahead with that?
So, okay, so the board has to just decide the scope. Do you want it for all town properties, or do you want certain specified beaches and parks?
I'm just trying to understand, like, where's, like, so not allowed to smoke here on town, but you can go into the road? Like, I'm trying to think.
We could do it similar to our business on town properties, 300 feet or whatever, 10 feet or whatever
Yeah, I'm
from.
just trying to understand, because, and also from the cleanup perspective, like, okay, so we won't have any cigarette butts in the parking lot, but they'll all be in the street. I'm just, I'm like, just tossing it
On
over
the
there.
sidewalk, yeah.
But this is something else I should talk to the chief offline,
Yeah, I think that's something.
Yeah,
and then we'll get back to you on that.
great.
And also highway too, just.
Yeah, yeah, it was,
Yeah.
I
I
can
understand where they're having the issues. because
Yes.
Yes.
It's something that.
I think that's the best suggestion. Jim and Brian talked to, and I think Taylor's Island shouldn't happen. There's
Yeah,
too
that
much
one's
investment
easy.
out there.
Well, and it's definitely a problem at the two beaches where it's already in our code that it's not allowed. So it's a matter of just making people aware that you're not supposed to be doing that here. And I don't think, I'm not a huge fan of signage, so like kind of small, like at the entry point.
Yeah,
there's one
and
sign
what
with all the
BJ
other
said,
signs.
like I said, it's the international sign of no
Yeah,
smoking.
it's not, it doesn't have to be significant, but it has to just let people know.
Okay, that's it on the agenda itself. Meg?
So we went to, BJ and I have been working on comp plan, and we've been going to the different HOA meetings, and we've been meeting with different civic organizations and groups, just trying to get more information and to get the word out there that, hey, we're working on the comp plan, stay tuned, and August and September, we're gonna have more public meetings. Here's our information. If something comes up that you think is important and should be included, let us know. So far, we've been to the Silver Beach Homeowners Association meeting. I went to the Mananic Creek Keepers, and then this week, we're going to the Shelterlands Homeowners Association, Mananic Peninsula, and yesterday, we went and spoke with the fire department.
We're gonna go back, because that was the
Yeah.
limited, we want to talk to the whole membership, or see if they have, thoughts and prayers for us.
Yeah, and some of their concerns were, I thought, valid and important.
Yeah.
One of their biggest concerns is that they're losing access to the beach. They're losing access to the water in a lot of areas where that used to be their plan was they throw the hose in and that's what they're going to use to put out the fires around this area. And they've lost access. People have put up huge hedges and gates.
Go with the
and
shoreline
blocked off.
access, we addressed that.
Well, there's a couple of spots where not, and I think, no, I mean, let's just talk about some big estates that are on the outside of Hay Beach. they're gated, fenced and shrubed. So even getting in, okay, so that's number one. Number two, then, once they get in, the driveways are not being necessarily built to accept them. Then the final thing is often the waterfront is not, they can't get to the waterfront because the house is in the way or the accessory structure or the pickleball. And none of this is to say that they won't take action to bang their way through, but do we really want that?
Couple of things come to mind.
Yeah.
Some of these are big houses. So should we be putting in that they should have a cistern for water?
Well, that was one thing that came up. Yes, a cistern for what, with the hookup.
Even if, yes, I mean, and even if they're not big houses,
Right.
maybe that's something that
Right.
they should look at, the building department should look at the plans. And as the fire marshal, he should look at,
Yeah, so that's.
I never.
Fire water accesses,
Yeah.
because some of the properties, you can't even get to the pool.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's so
yeah, right.
gated, and
Yeah, I
maybe
never
the
thought
pool's
of
in the
that.
front yard.
Right.
All the access is in the backyard, you
Right.
can't get around the side yard, so it's all a matter of it takes more time, there's not, poor access to water is poor access to water. We don't have hydrants, and the hydrants we do have aren't hooked up to an unlimited water supply, they're hooked up to storage tanks. So
Yeah.
there are all of these things that have to be considered, and, the more large hedges, the more pillars and gates, the harder it is for the fire department to access the property should there be a fire.
Without doing that.
So those were really,
That's interesting.
that
So we
little
should
ramp-
talk to Reed as fire.
Yeah, and Little Ram, and put this in the comp plan. Little Ram has lost its access. I was out there with Andy, we were looking, there, it used to be at the end of the road.
Yeah, right.
It's not there
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, he was thinking it's gonna have to be off the causeway, which is a long haul. Every minute, we all know
Yeah, right.
this delay is,
Is a problem.
it's a problem.
This is a perfect time to visit the dirt roads, Tennis Court Lane. After the meeting was over,
Yeah.
I made a right down Tennis Court Lane. You can never get
Fire
a fire truck down Tennis Court Lane, not even close. It's just one or two little spots.
Yeah.
It would take the highway department, something going in there, an hour or so to clear out a couple of big branches, maybe one tree stump, to open that up for emergency access.
Actually, something that comes to mind is for planning, subdivisions. Planning board, if you're within 1,000 feet of water, you don't need to put a cistern in. But usually when you're looking at it from a planning board perspective, everything's open.
Yeah.
But then once things get built up,
Yeah.
that 1,000-foot access may be hard to navigate. So we may want to change that part of the law as well, so that it doesn't matter.
Access to water.
Or you just have to put the cistern in because you can't count on that 1,000 feet anymore.
So those were really their concerns was, really access and maintaining ways for access. And then the other one was recruitment and retention. Their big fear is that they won't be a volunteer, they won't be able to support a volunteer fire department. And then once it goes paid, in their minds, you lose a lot of character in your community. And you lose a lot of people who contribute significantly to the community by partnering with other organizations. So those are really their big concerns. And, when we go to the meeting, first Monday of August, then we'll have more, I'm sure. But it was a good meeting. Let's see, what else do I have? The water testing that we were gonna do in the center. I think we've gotten all the results, like all the
Survey,
responses
yeah.
that we're gonna get. So we have 155 responses of people who would like to participate, which is great. And they're very well spread out through the
Spread
area.
out. That was the key, yeah.
So, working on putting together a spreadsheet that we can send to the water testing company, and then we're gonna start coordinating testing. So we'll be reaching out to all the people who responded and figuring out what day and time they can be home to have the water testing company come and sample their water. So hopefully.
So we need
That's
someone
great.
to spearhead
That is-
the application to WQI,
Yes.
pay for that water
So the
test.
WQI meeting is what, the 8th?
Dave,
And so once I have set
you
numbers,
put that on your agenda?
we'll come and visit. We'll come and visit WQI with the ask.
Yeah, we'll have the numbers, yeah.
So we'll have solid numbers by then.
August 3rd.
So the triangle,
August 3rd.
the triangle
Is that
is pretty
first?
much Meg spoken for then, huh? You have.
Yeah,
people
it's
all
good.
over.
We've got
Yeah,
very
great.
good response rate.
Nice, very
Um,
nice.
So that's, it's good. It's a good thing. And then we have something fun, but I'll let Tim talk about that when you go to the public. And then I think that's it for me. I think I'm good.
Jim?
Yeah, Lords of Monantic, I went Sunday night along with some of the people out, a few other people I saw there. Very nice turnout. Just goes to show you how talented Lisa Shaw is. The woman is everywhere, and she, wrote and directed the play, and it was very well done. Hats off to the cast. Take a lot of guts to get up there and do that, and the crew, and the musicians, and to the Historical Society itself. There was a story about the Paragon, which was a ship that was built right here, and in Monantic, and sailed across the Atlantic in difficult times through a French blockade and restored trade with the British Isles. So it was really well done and a very, very nice evening by all. So congratulations to Lisa and to all the crews that made that possible. And for the school for helping out with all the chairs. That was very nice of them to do. Silver Beach meeting was on Saturday. Peter, you were outstanding. I could have written 25 things that you said that were important, but I'll narrow it down to one: aeration of lawns. It seemed to get the interest of more people saying, "What recharge? You want to recharge the aquifer? Well, you can't if your lawn is like a concrete, and in this time of the year, oftentimes it is very, very hard during these drought times. So if you aerate the lawn, it would seriously help." But he talked about so many other positive things. He could have been the whole meeting, but I thought you did a great job. And people had a lot of questions that you addressed. I would have liked to see more time for Megan BJ to be able to get up there, because I think there were some questions from some of the skeptics about the plan itself, that comprehensive plan itself, that that you could easily put to rest, especially with a few people in that crowd.
Well, we're going to crash your barbecue, so.
Well, that's good.
Don't worry, we'll be there.
That's good. But I would have liked to see you had more time to be able to address that. I want to talk about the sign too, that that Doug put up at the corner of Brander and West Neck. It's a great sign. It's on drought status. It's very colorful. It's tastefully done. Every time you go by it, you can actually see what the drought status for the town is. I really think we could put a dozen of them around town, and all major homeowners associations could participate in this. I think it's a worthwhile addition. I'm not big for signage, but it's so beautifully done and so colorful. I applaud it because it's educational, it's an awareness, and it's also going to help in terms of conservation. So on all 3 points, I think it drives home.
And it's data-based.
Yes, it's data-based, right, exactly. I would like to encourage the town board to pursue, I did have a preliminary meeting about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with Dr. Dolger about the responsibility of the tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts. And, he is open to any suggestion. I think some of these are recreation areas that need to be used by everybody throughout the entire year. They're underused when school is in session, because you can't really go on the property. They're not maintained to the degree that we need to maintain them and pay attention to them. And during the summer months, they are overused. We need additional areas for public use, for recreation, particularly for tennis and pickleball and basketball. The cry is there. Play areas where families can go and have a good time throughout the high season, I think, is something that I would ask that we would take a look at. Maybe sit down with Brian and Mr. Dunning and talk a little bit about this further. But I think we could do somewhat of a better job in terms of maintaining these areas on a long-range plan, make it part of our capital plan, and make it part of our recreation department for better utilization. Right, so that's basically it. Thank you.
Amber?
I don't have anything.
BJ?
I took a walk along Louise Beach this morning, or Crescent Beach, or Sunset Beach, depending on what area you got here. And prompted again by this conversation with one of our employees of the state of the beach in the morning. So a couple of observations that I was sort of primed to look for. the highway, they get down there with a machine that
Right.
cleans the beach. It's hard if the beach has stuff on it.
Right.
So observation number one, the tent skeletons are being left up. That's hard for them to maneuver around. Observation number two, you can see where Sunset Beach, the hotel puts everything neatly against the bulkhead. But then you can guess a couple of people come late in the evening or pull out an umbrella, pull out a couple of chairs and then leave them. So again, almost impossible for to navigate that without getting out, and it takes a lot longer to do it. So suggestion is we'll keep cleaning the beach, but Sunset, you might have to help us out a little bit
Sure.
by sending another person out there, early enough in the morning, late enough at night.
Yeah, we don't do it every day.
No, we don't.
So during that meeting that we had in the spring with them, they agreed to do this, so that we just need to remind them that is so important. Because you can't stop that machine and get out and move all this stuff.
Oh, it takes forever. And
No, it's a
and
big
maybe we
beach.
should do it more often. The beach was a bit, there was litter today, and that's just, I hate to see that. You really
On a
do.
Tuesday, you went this morning?
This morning.
On a Tuesday morning, not a Monday morning, okay.
So there's that. I walked all the way down then to a little walk jog, if I have to brag, all the way down to Quinnipiac, and there was a ramp there, a public boat ramp there.
Right.
And there's been a little conversation on Facebook about where can I launch a 30-foot boat by myself on Shelter Island? And everybody had ideas, and one of them was Quinnipiac, but you could never, because their dock, I don't know if I can explain
That's
this.
a town dock, they lease it.
They lease it, right. So there's the dock, and then there's an L that comes off of it, right? And that's a floating thing. It easily can be repositioned, stuff fixed. And here's the ramp. So if you launch a boat, you're launching almost into that L. So I think we need to consider making a request of the Quinnipiac to put their L on the other side, so the ramp is now clear. And does the lease say it's exclusive use, that somebody could tie up their boat for a minute while they move their car and trailer, truck and trailer, and come back and sail away, boat away? I don't know if that's even a possibility. But we are limited with ramps here, especially in where you can go and park.
Yeah.
At least you can park along the roadway there.
Yeah.
So I just point that out, that a really good access point is kind of being blocked right now. I think this will mean that Quinnipiac will probably also have to move their swim area a little bit now, because if the L goes around the other side, you're kind of coming close to their buoyed off swim area.
How much of a need is there for this?
I think there's a tremendous need. In this discussion on Facebook, how if you don't get to Daniel Lord Road early in the morning, you can launch, but you can't park. There's no parking
I
lot.
find on Facebook, it's the same people all the time
Yeah.
complaining.
But it doesn't make, well, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean there's no one following you. Just because, because they complain often doesn't mean that it's not a problem. I mean, I think it might be. You really, I think.
I think if it was a problem, we would hear about it.
Let's investigate it a little bit more.
I don't know.
Let's.
How do we
I
investigate?
feel like we have a duty, though, to maintain our launch areas and
We do
public
maintain
access. But,
No, keep this open,
Yeah.
like this encroachment.
yeah.
I don't think it's a lot to ask either of the institution, because I don't think we're asking them to spend money. I don't think we're just asking for a movement.
Well, if you ask them to move the swim area, it's a big.
Is it?
I'd have to look
Because they
at
have,
it.
buoys, and I'm just thinking you pick them up and you move them.
I don't know, maybe they're there, yeah, we'll have to look at it.
Yeah, go down and have a look,
Yeah.
and see what you
I'm gonna
think.
drive, I'm not gonna.
Come on, walk, John.
Jeremy wants to jog down.
So it was, interesting, Pheasant Beach. It feels like it's changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway. That's all I have.
That's all you have? Okay. Stephen?
Nothing, Mr. Supervisor.
Amber? Okay, anybody in the audience have anything? That's Tim.
Sure. Just now.
Okay, I'll just go back to sleep then.
Short and sweet. So I have good news on the ETIP application.
Good. Good.
Our application was accepted.
Jim, I used that same line, short and sweet, didn't work.
Thank you, Tim.
Patel, Chair of the Town Green Options Committee. I just want to announce that the Shelter Island has been accepted to partner with the Department of Energy ETIP program for 2023. There were 8 other remote and islanded communities that are also accepted this year, including Block Island, which is really interesting, very similar. It'd be great if moving forward we could share information and other things as we go forward. Again, another island in Maine, 2 areas in Martha's Vineyard.
That's in Puerto Rico.
Hawaii.
Puerto Rico, Vieques, Sitka, Alaska, island in Hawaii.
I've been to many of these.
So interesting mix and with different needs, and some are sort of further along than we are, but
What does it actually mean, Tim? Are you getting money?
no. So I just want to be really clear about this. We are not getting money. We're getting expertise from government entities and other entities. So it's really about expertise. We're not getting money. And it's like an 18-month program. And then at the end of which we figure out what we want to do, how to go forward, and then seek funding.
Nice.
Do you,
Free expert consulting services.
That's what I say. It is money because we're not hiring a consultant.
right.
We have a consultant right here.
Will you be then working, when does it begin? Will it be the current Highway, Department of Public Works guy working with you on this? I'm wondering, how do you foresee this actually?
Well, we already have the Green Committee.
Yeah.
So that's our core group that we'll be working with the different entities. We have a contact person we work with that hasn't been quite established who that is yet. We've been working so far with someone from the Island Institute in Maine, but there's also somebody else out in Colorado. But she told me this morning that that will sort of be decided soon. We have sort of a meet and greet in early August. We will need to engage some more people. I'm already looking at one other person on the Green Committee who has a lot of expertise also in this area. And we're fortunate with 3 of the people we already have in the Green Committee who are fairly fluent in a lot of energy, sustainability, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we're sort of, I think we're off to a good start. Some other things that will have to be worked out in terms of the meetings, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank Dr. Dolger, Terry Lucas, Jim Reed, and Meg, who is representing the town, who all wrote really wonderful support letters. That was part of the application that we needed sort of support from the community. I want to thank the town board, Stephen, for giving it the legal eye read over. And then I especially want to thank Don D'Amato, Sarah Gordon, and Steve Sanders, who all worked on the application and sort of pulled it together very quickly in a 2-week period and came up with a really good application that really sort of, I think, really laid the groundwork for what we want to look for and what we need.
Yeah.
So.
Tim, did Congressman Lalota get involved, or did he just take credit?
He did not. He got the word before anybody else did. I was surprised to see that.
That's okay.
Tim,
Now we can reach out to him.
Nice.
Referencing new jobs too.
Yes, I know.
Good paying jobs.
not that there's anything wrong with that.
I received word on Friday, and Meg and the committee members know, but they really wanted us not to go public until today. But the press release came out.
So,
Dark until today.
Thanks for all your work on this.
Tim has been waving the flag, Stephen, of the difficulty of, for Green Options, but other committees, to maintain this in-person quorum thing. And so you were gonna lobby some guy you knew No, you were
No,
gonna,
I was asking for an opinion.
yeah, so let's follow
I'm
up.
not gonna-
Yeah, because,
We are, I didn't want to get into that specifically right now.
no, but
We're gonna need to,
it's a way to get the,
we're gonna need, we have to figure out something.
I don't understand how when we sat in on the county planning board, that they could do it.
I don't know how they can do it either. I think they were just, I was actually gonna send the applicable provisions of law to their attorney.
Well, rather than-
don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, okay.
No, it's every committee and here, today, we had the WMAC, we have the WAC, we have the green options, all here today, and
I understand.
Yeah, all committees aren't created equal, right? So there's ones that have affirmative, like charges in our town code.
Exactly.
No, I mean, arguably WMAC, they have, a lot of weight behind them when they make recommendations and things like that. So, but there's other.
They all have the same problem.
Yeah.
Everybody.
What, as far as not being able to meet that requirement?
Yeah.
it's
And
tough,
Zoom was the answer to everything,
Yes.
yeah.
No, so again, I'll look into it further.
Yeah, thanks.
Is it possible that,
Wait, you want to just come up?
yeah, I'm just wondering if every person who's participating in a committee,
I just want to add, going forward with this, that's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Such
My
good-
question is, if there's a core, for example, the WAC is now going to take on a subcommittee reporting to it. I assume that subcommittee these are not appointed members by the board of the WAC. They don't count toward our quorum requirements.
Correct.
So there may be ways to extend our committees to more people without necessarily increasing the burden of the number of people who have to have a majority of quorum on site.
Correct. You could have these subgroups do most of the work and have the broader committee be on hiatus during this off season, on season. And, have these working groups that don't have quorums do the work and then bring it back instead of having more frequent full-on MOS committee meetings. So that's a stopgap that you can employ, but I'll look into it to see if we can.
I also support, as somebody who has concerns about immune issues, I very much support to the degree that we can accommodate Zoom participation.
Yeah. Maybe that's another way to appeal, if there's such a thing as appealing a decision. We are, the reality is we're an older community. And so most of our committees are older people. And, we're always mentioned first, old people, be careful. So, yeah.
James?
Just a question about the WQI and where we are in the deliberations about, our recommendations about the changes and such.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that distributed to, we had this subgroup and I mentioned it last week, but haven't seen it come.
Yeah, Coco was making the modifications and then she was
Yeah.
gonna send it out.
Yeah.
we'll
So
circle
this is
back.
the paper, you're talking about the paperwork thing. And you're also referring to the money thing?
Well, just the
whole-
changes, a lot of it, we're sort of holding in abeyance some, going forward with some applications because, it's going to change the
Right.
money thing.
I forget where I heard that at a WQI meeting, or have you all been briefed?
Yeah, I brought
As
it
to
up
what-
last week around
yeah,
the table. So
right.
we're just about,
I'll wait till
Coco
next
was
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Coco was making the last of the changes. So I thought it
So
would have
it'd be
been.
good just for us to be able
Yeah.
to move ahead.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And vis-a-vis the, we're bringing, thing about the well testing and stuff like that. I wonder if those same people would be receptive to an outreach about
IA, yeah.
the IA systems.
Oh, it's a great idea.
And maybe we could think about that.
If the water tester people hand out the application at there. They're putting them-
But that would be good. And I was thinking WQI money could be maybe used in the, tidal wetland thing with, getting more police involvement or whatever it is, it might, I think personally, I think more boarding is a good idea, and that would spread like wildfire.
Yes.
I agree with Stephen, not always, but on this one I do. I think, it was a knee-jerk thing that, I don't know.
Yeah.
state, whatever, I mean, I think it was done sort of haphazardly. But from my own observation, for boats, I think there's a lot less boats in these anchorages than there historically had been. I mean, I think maybe it swells up in the middle of the afternoon where everybody has, they're wrapped up and they swim and whatever, but they sort of dissipate, and it seems to me, like I remember, Cockles Harbor, we would go there and Linda would say, oh, it looks like a city there where there's so many lights, and it's not like that anymore. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be cognizant of these things, but, I agree with, what Jim Reed said, I think we don't want to get the wrong impression about, that we're somehow anti-boating, we are an island and the water still is good and we should keep it that way.
Right.
But I think, a couple of short-term things could,
Really?
And now that it's out there in public about cutting through that in some fashion, Shell Beach, I think it's something that should be pursued big time because, all the efforts that are being made in Menandic Creek and whatnot, won't be as effective unless that flushing, is reintroduced. And all those people who lost their beach, this is my own feeling, I'm not a scientist on this, but all the Peconic Road, Avenue people who don't have a beach, I think would start getting it back again if that was opened in some fashion. So. And then just the final thing, I have to say, were there any permits for all those floating docks by Camp Gunnepet, town dock, whatever it is there?
I don't know. I honestly
remember
don't.
seeing that.
Yeah. I'll come before the WMAC.
It is in a town landing. We know we don't want to obstruct any town landings with private things.
Yeah.
I have a configuration on Google Earth.
Yeah.
I can share the screen, Chris.
But it's, I don't even know how long they've been there. They've had a floating.
Remember this.
Yeah, and they're the rubber or they're the inflatable kind or whatever they are. They're not wooden.
Yeah, it really does obstruct the.
So look at that. I mean,
That's right in the middle of the town landing.
Yeah, there's the landing there.
you almost have no room to put a boat in there.
Right. So I agree. This should be flipped over here and you can
Right.
see the roped off beach area,
Yeah.
which is what you were questioning
Yeah.
before. But similar to
Yeah, they can move the beach. It's not that big
Waits
a deal.
and
Yeah.
Crescent
Yeah.
Beach, you could move this, just
Yeah.
flip it over in
Yeah.
this direction.
And just for the record, you can launch a pretty big boat on Clark Kettle.
On Tar Kettle. And is there parking for your trailer when you?
Bit of parking along the road there.
Yeah, all right.
I'm just saying, like
Yeah.
Peter's boat went in and out there.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
That's a good size boat.
Can be done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good to know.
Just a
Thanks, Jim.
comment on James's comment about the idea of flow through under.
Sorry, Peter, if you're gonna.
Just need to come up, just, I can't even.
Who was the mask man?
What is that past now?
Flow through at West Neck Harbor. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that by opening up flow through there, you also increase resilience of that causeway. Eventually, you're going to be hit by a hard whack from a storm. And the more that you just let the water go through rather than topping over, the better off you're going to be.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, anybody else?
Punch through where it already wants to punch
Go
through.
for it.
Thank you.
Anybody in the Zoom audience have anything?
Is he on the roll?
Yes.
Okay, we should test Joe with the Shell Beach.
Okay, if there's nobody in the Zoom audience, we're gonna make a motion to close the work session. Jerry?
Tom Field.
Oh, Tom?
Field. All right.
If I may, I couldn't raise my hand, Zoom wasn't working. Just a couple of things, real quick, I know we want to go home. The town landings issue that brought back to mind the end of Congdon Creek. Some other town landings also need access points when you launch your boats. Congdon Creek comes to mind because that was taken away. And the only other one, I believe, is Daniel Lord Road. Something to think about that when it comes to town landings and launching boats. We don't have many access for after launching the boat, you know what I mean? To move the trip. Other thing real quick, the DEC and the closures things, I haven't gotten a chance to talk with the rest of the Baymen. But I fear the consensus among us is going to be that we're going to want these anchorages closed until this is resolved. So that, I just wanted to put that on the table so it doesn't shock anybody. And last but not least, the culvert idea underneath Shell Beach. I think that's an excellent idea. And I'm going to leave it all at that and let you guys go home.
Great, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, have a good night. Thank you very much
You
for being
too,
on.
thank you. Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we close the work session and go into a special meeting to adopt,
Two resolutions.
two resolutions with a memorandum of understanding regarding the online moorings, and another one to accept, to approve memorial for Kim Brewer.
Meg, you want to go first? I'll go second.
Whereas the town supervisor executed the subject memorandum of understanding with Online Mooring LLC to process Shelter Island Town mooring applications online on April 18th, 2022. And whereas pursuant to the subject memorandum of understanding, there is an application and renewal charge by Online Mooring LLC. Now therefore be it resolved that application renewal fees and the 3.75% plus 30-cent fee for credit card payments, if applicable, charged by Online Mooring LLC shall be borne directly by the online mooring applicants. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Whereas Jennifer Brewer Smith has requested permission to hold a celebration of life event to be held at Shell Beach on July 30th, 2023, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. for approximately 25 attendees. Whereas the required application and fees have been submitted, now therefore be it resolved that said request is hereby approved. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion, we close the special meeting. It's an executive session to discuss the employment history of an employee. Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.